Welcome to Performance Anxiety. This week we speak with Cole Guerra. He's the driving force behind I Am Casting. He's also a psychologist. So we talk about how that influences his songwriting. We talk about how his songwriting influences his psychological work. We also talk about his new album, Carnival Barkers, how he soundproofed with an ironing board and recorded it with a busted microphone. We also talk about the time he went touring with his band and played right in the middle of Heavy Metal Night in Baltimore. So please check out the new album. Give him a follow on social media. I Am Casting Music. Give us a follow at Performance ANX on Twitter and Instagram. And check out our shop at performanceanx.threadless.com. And give us a rating and review wherever you listen. iTunes, Stitcher, wherever it is. All it does is help us out. So please enjoy this episode of Performance Anxiety with Cole Guerra of I Am Casting.
This is Cole Guerra from I Am Casting. Hope you'll check out my new album called Carnival Barkers. Had a good time here on Performance Anxiety with Mark.
All right. Well, it's a pleasure to meet you.
It's good to meet you, Mark.
And I appreciate you coming on and talking to me about your music and your experience as a professional musician.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate you having some interest in talking about the album.
Oh, gosh, it's my pleasure. It's my pleasure. It's really interesting. It's not. It's different than what I normally listen to, but I like it a lot.
Well, thank you. Yeah, when I hear the word "interesting" to start, of course, it's never a good word anywhere. But yeah. I'll read it positively. Thank you.
Yes, definitely. Please do, because it's. Usually I end up listening to stuff that's a little heavier, so it's that's what I meant by that. So I didn't be hopefully. No. So, and I've got my notes. I
don't. This will be a little unfair. I can't reach my Skype. I'm just like, because I'll be risking. Go ahead.
All right, good. Well, that's what music is. That's what music's all about. Risk, right? Taking some risks. Like I said, I did listen to the album, and I was really intrigued by it. It's really, like I said before, it's different than what I normally listen to, but it was so good. And you have a band that plays with you, or is it you doing all the music yourself?
So on the recording itself, most of it's me. So there's all the tunes I think there's drums, for instance. There's 11 tunes. All of them have drums, but only there's a drummer other than me playing on 2 tracks. Okay. There's a bassist playing on 1 track. So Stephen Kaufman's a drummer, a guy named Pete Kimash, who I used to play with live a bunch. He went on tour with me a number of years ago for a while. He played bass on 1 tune called Seams, which is the closer on the record. Stephen's on that one as well, playing drums. There's a couple horn players on a couple tunes. And I think that's it. Everything else on there is me. So all the keys, all the guitars you hear in the bass, the percussion. So I don't really play a kit. I don't really play drums. So that's me basically doing the sort of with my hands on a MIDI keypad sort of situation. But I kind of knew what I wanted. The tunes are actually kind of written in part with a lot of influence of whatever I'm doing with the drums, which is weird since I'm not a drummer. That's one of the reasons I didn't actually have a drummer on this record. So my last record a while ago put out under my name, Cole Guerra, that one has, a drummer on all the tracks, a great drummer named Steve Goulding. J.D. Foster is playing bass throughout the record. But this one actually playing drums or, pseudo playing drums, playing bass, that actually shaped how I wrote the tune. So it became part of the songwriting process. And if I'd had another drummer, I couldn't have done that. Typically, if you have another drummer, I would have been writing the tunes on a guitar or keyboard, right? And then in my head, I would kind of know what I wanted arrangement-wise, but I'd be bringing the tune to them more or less.
Okay.
And then they would be kind of, adding drums, their own thing, some of what I might point them towards. But which is great. I mean, they're bound to be better drummers than I'm going to be. But the song wouldn't have been the same, because it really did create a lot of direction in terms of what the tunes ended up sounding like. So you probably noticed there's a lot of percussion on the record.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of percussion, and so yeah, it's sort of weird. There's only just a drummer playing, other than anything I'm doing on one of them. So yeah, it's for better or for worse, it's mainly me on there.
So that your first album came out several years ago, and you used your name, Cole Guerra,
right,
and this album's coming out under the moniker I Am Casting.
Yeah.
So what was the reason for the change, and how did you determine that you're going to use the name I Am Casting?
So I'm definitely not going to go with your keep it light here. This is very serious. Serious. Should have started with some.
Oh man, I screwed up already.
These are the deep questions, right? Well, it had been, because it's been a number of years. A couple of things happened. One, I mentioned just a couple minutes ago, the way I'm writing tunes really changed. So when I used to write tunes, I would basically construct them at a keyboard, a piano, or with my electric or acoustic guitar in my lap, and I'd be weeks or months sort of putting that tune together and then arranging and bringing it to other musicians and so forth, and then going to the recording studio was the last thing. I was in that last record was recorded, tracked in a really great New York studio. Finished off back here in North Carolina, mixed here in North Carolina. I mean, so couldn't have been, more fortunate in terms of that setup, but it really lends itself to a very different way of writing tunes. So I became way more interested in this process that I only stumbled on a couple of years ago. And it's because I knew nothing about home recording stuff. And I basically, after a few years literally playing nothing, I wasn't playing guitar, I wasn't playing keyboard for maybe reasons we'll come back to, but I actually got back into it because a friend of mine who mixed the last record and who mixed this one as well, his name's Ian Schreier, I just started talking to him about recording equipment and doing it on my own, and I end up buying a laptop, your kind of basic digital audio workstation, a DAW, a MIDI keyboard, a mic. I mean, believe it or not, before this, I didn't even have a vocal mic. I mean, everything was at the studio I go to.
Yeah.
So I bought enough that I could just basically spend a month or two figuring out if I could figure out how to do something on my own. And what happened was that got me just interested again in songwriting. I really hadn't been really motivated to do much for a few years. And I got really into the process of writing and tracking this way, because what ended up happening was, to learn the software, I'd be like, well, all right, I'm going to play just a progression. I make something up on the fly here on the keyboard, right? And I'd be like, all right, hey, there's some virtual instruments. Let's make sure I can figure out how to do this. And I'd record it, and instead of laboring over it for weeks, I'd be like, oh, I kind of like the sound of that. And then I'd be like, well, let's see what the virtual drums sound like, right? And then I would find some sounds I liked, a kit that sounded okay to me that I can make sense of, and then I would play something, just like a verse worth of drums or percussion of some sort. Okay. And for some reason, it totally unlocked something. I would play those and I'd be like, oh, now I can. It created, I guess, a feel. It was like, oh, now I know what this song is now. And then that would propel me into a next section, whether it was a chorus or a bridge, and I do it the same way. So I was writing in these chunks and then just committing to it, almost like more of an improv thing. Like, okay, I've written these 4 or 5 bars. Screw it. I'm not going to do my usual anal 8-week reworking of those 4 bars. I'm going to actually start layering shit on top of that. So the texture, the feel became way more important to me. And that just kicked off like a year and a half of writing. I mean, the 11 tunes on this record were all written in like basically a 1-year span, like middle of 2016 through middle or end of 2017. Okay. And so coinciding with that, all the election stuff was happening. So on the one hand, I was getting back into songwriting, just the music piece, which almost always comes before lyrics for me. And then the nomination process was happening. Trump was leading the pack. I was scratching my head, But it was, and at that point, just great fodder for ideas for songwriting. So I wrote a tune or two that I think had some of these themes about like like the way in which people can be influenced in pretty malignant ways and maybe exploiting that sort of fear of the other, sort of thinking about the immigration or race, ethnicity issues that were coming up even then,
Right.
Now, of course, it's all exploded. And once I wrote one, I think it was Flood, maybe one of the tunes on the record, I just realized, okay, I almost could just see an album. I was like, all right, which struck me as more interesting, this conceptual, album thing where it's like, okay, I'll do, whether it ended up being 9 tunes or 12 tunes, I wasn't sure how many tunes it'd be, but I want all the songs in some way to be relevant to themes that are popping out around this. So not so much about politics or policy, but more about the psychology of how sort of this social influence process, how the title of the album, Carnival Barkers, how sort of this sales pitchy kind of, persuasion selling is everything. I don't even know if the substance matters to some of the people doing the pitching. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then on the other side, there's a few tunes that are more about what would it be like to be on the other end of this, to be someone who is, one of the tunes is called Helpless. That's a pretty straightforward title. So about powerlessness or helplessness. So on the one hand, it's sort of this grifter, Pied Piper theme stuff. A few of the tunes are very much about like the smarmy Pied Piper, like in it for money or revenge. I mean, in the real Pied Piper story, he doesn't get paid, right? I think in the original Pied Piper, Hamlin dude doesn't get paid, and then he goes and he gets the kids, for revenge, which I think is also pretty relevant to how certain people seem to think. So, so it kind of was a way in for me to the songwriting again, and I knew that unlike previous stuff I'd done, I liked the idea of it being not like a concept record, but like a thing, a project almost. So I almost thought of I Am Casting in a way as kind of a project. And then I realized, well, actually, I kind of like this approach. It's totally different than I used to do. I don't really see myself as a conventional like singer-songwriter, which has a lot of, I don't know, it seems to activate a lot of images for people of what kind of music it'll be. And I don't really think of myself like that.
Okay.
I just don't want to, I guess maybe I'd rather their assumptions not be made. I Am Casting, you hear that, and what the hell is that? I mean,
yeah.
Whereas you hear a name, and I think it may do more to activate assumptions. And so I like that. I like the anonymity of it. I like the idea that you don't know, are you about to put something on if you haven't been exposed to my music? Is it more band-like? Is it a solo thing? And I like this project-like view of it. And so I could imagine the next thing I've already started writing now, sort of post-album, as this comes out. And I think the same thing, probably will be a thematically linked, be different, but some thematically linked sort of project thing. Now, I may invite other musicians to record with me. I still play live with people. Playing live, I don't think I could ever play live solo. It's just not really interesting. Because, well, first, the arrangements are too dense.
Yeah.
And I don't know enough about technology to be the guy looping 50 things, and so I have friends in town who play with me, and maybe some of them will show up on the next record.
Are you planning on touring with this album? And if you are, how do you go about picking musicians to play with you, since most of it was done on your own?
Last time it was a no-brainer. When I did it a few years ago, the album under my own name, the Scarves and Knives record, it was pretty straightforward. I knew I needed a tour. I would go out. I think the longest, where I would take some, that I could do solo. I could do solo, and I could take people out. And it was a core of like 3 other people would go with me, and we'd go out for 2 weeks, and then a week and a half, and then another, I think, 2 weeks. So maybe a total, I don't know, like 6 to 8 weeks, something like that. Yeah. But actually a chunk of that was solo. I think they only went out with me twice. And then the rest of that was me going on the road solo a bunch. Okay. Frankly, because I couldn't afford it.
Yeah.
It's just too damn expensive. It's not like I was drawing tons to these shows, not enough to constantly be paying people to come out. So
right.
This time's different for a couple reasons. One, so a few of the musicians who I really like and are great down here actually heard some of this music and just kind of shake their heads and like, how are we going to do that? I mean, so there is this component of, how are we going to do this?
Right.
That's a little tricky. And the other thing is, because I now, unlike then, I kind of have this two-path thing going. So I'm a working psychologist.
Right.
And so the idea that I'm going to be able multiple times to pick up weeks and go out is not super realistic. And the touring life, especially when you're indie, sort of whether label or not, is not, it can be a hard thing to do. I've experienced that.
Yeah.
And so I think the actual touring thing, my approach early on is just to do some local stuff and the occasional out of town thing, but that won't even start until April, May. I'm not timing it like, people around here are like, oh, when's the album release party? When are you going to do the album release in New York after that? Like last time I did it was a show at a place called The Living Room in New York. Okay. That was my release in New York. And then I had a release in North Carolina. It was very kind of traditional stuff. And it's like, I'm not doing a release. So I think I'm going to wait a month or two. Hopefully word gets out about the record, so there's more of an audience, since I Am Casting is new. It's not like there's some audience built in waiting to see me. And as that builds, play more shows. And if it seems to make more sense to actually take the band on the road, I'd do it. But I'm not convinced that opportunity is going to be there. I have a feeling it'll be just a few shows in the markets I used to do, you know what I mean? Northeast, maybe some Midwest, Chicago, whatever. Chicago, Detroit, that kind of. So yeah, pocket in the Midwest and the Northeast, and then where I live now, which is Durham. So Durham, Chapel Hill, Raleigh area. And I don't know, the live thing is frankly lost some of its appeal to me. And I think part of it's going to be how much do people seem to be interested in hearing this live? And then I'll do it.
Now, you mentioned that you're a working psychologist. So let's talk about that a little bit. What came first, I guess? The interest in psychology or your interest in being a musician?
It actually was, I wish I had a clean answer for this. I mean, I do have an easy answer for this, but it's not one of the others. Both happened at about the same time. I was actually in my mid-20s. So up to that point, when I was in college, I think I took one psychology class. I was not a psych major.
Okay.
I played music since I was a little kid, in piano real early, guitar starting late in high school. But I never thought of writing an album or being a musician or a songwriter. I was involved in sort of the arts or creative stuff, but it was all theater. I've been doing theater for years. I was taking that pretty seriously, actually. So someone had asked me at, 10 or even 18, 19, if you're doing something artistic, what would it be? It would have clearly been, I'll be acting, I'll be in New York, or I'll be in Chicago, or I'll be in LA. And so music was like an adjunct thing. I could, I did it. It was entertaining. And then when I realized I didn't want to do theater, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. My use of the piano and the guitar was to be able to pay my rent. So I basically, 5 days a week would, when I was 22, 23, 24, basically, most days of the week you would find me at some bar being that person playing tons of covers, and that was my rent money,
Okay.
I'd sneak in an original tune or two, but my tunes were, sure they kind of sucked. So I don't know. I don't know if I would want to hear. And then what happened was I decided. So I was like, I don't know, 24 or something like that. And I kind of realized, I won't get into this because take us way off subject, that I did want to do the psychology thing. And I was just kind of in my own living room starting to write more on the guitar.
Okay.
And I was like, this is kind of fun, but still not thinking about it like a real thing. And I moved. I'd been in the Midwest my whole life. So, Detroit area, Ann Arbor for school, Chicago, and then came down to Durham, where I've been since. And I was, I think, I don't know, a year into grad school, and I haven't thought about this in a while. So I was grad school down here at Duke, and down the street is UNC. Okay. Got to know some UNC folks. And the first year, like me, a first year grad student in psychology over at UNC, I got introduced to him because he was a musician in the area. His name's Ricky Hicks. And he was in a band called Finger, which is really big around here, toured nationally. I mean, really, really good band. That would have been like, when were they a band? The 90s, like the mid. So I think it was the 90s band. So there's a lot. He was really involved in like the 90s scene or whatever. Okay. So anyhow, so he's like, we started talking, hang out. I played a couple times just, over his place. He's like, you should really record some of this stuff. And I got a friend who has a studio, town over, a small town called Mebane.
Okay.
Not too expensive. You should do it. And I was really thinking, someday when I'm 85 and grandkids will have my tunes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I went over there, tracked a bunch of songs over a brief period of time. And just progressively, as I did it, got more and more into it. And I thought, it's kind of like, oh, maybe I can. So I basically, printed up some, got some CDs together. This wasn't a real, I wouldn't even, it's not like I would be like, go get this. It's, nothing. But what it did was it allowed me to go play, not just locally, but I went back up to Chicago and Detroit and Ann Arbor. I went out to New York. I actually met the guy who produced a record with me named J.D. Foster, did Scarves and Knives, because I invited him to a show out in New York. He came. I was, pretty regularly going up there to play the Living Room or a place called Fez Under Time. And so it just kind of happened. So the sort of psychology thing was happening as the music thing was happening. And the music thing got serious enough where I decided I'm going to record this record with JD. I'm going to come out to New York. And I'm even going to take a leave from the psychology program. I'm going to see if I can make a go of this. I recorded Scarves and Knives, toured. I was doing some stuff with psychology to keep my foot in the door enough towards the program. But really, I was a couple of years more or less just away from it, toured, and then realized I got to make a choice. If I'm going to finish the psychology thing, I got to finish it now. I wasn't sure how much traction I had with the music thing,
Yeah.
And so basically I dove back into psychology, which I loved. I loved the clinical thing. But what I found was once I stopped the music for a while, it was really hard to sit at the piano without being, I don't know, not down is not quite the word. It didn't interest me. I don't know if I wasn't going to do it, like really do it. It just kind of lost its shine for me.
Okay.
So that was it. So it's both at the same time. I'm sure there's stuff about what interests me so that both of those things appeal to me, and they clearly influenced each other. What I do with psychology clearly influences, I'm sure what I'm doing with music, most obviously some of the lyrical stuff. And, I don't know the other way around what happens, but yeah, so that was kind of the path. So now I am, the working psychologist thing. But like I said, a couple of years ago, I kind of decided to dive back in and see if I could pull both these things off.
Well,
this is hilarious. This is really fun. It'll get lighter and lighter. This is all the deep shit. We'll circle back around.
Yeah, exactly. We'll get to the funny eventually. And I don't have my drink with me, so it's that's my fault. Now you said you did a lot of and I guess you got to forgive me. I'm kind of going back and forth into different topics and all. So it's just whatever when you say something, it'll spark something in my head. But you mentioned recording in different ways and approaching the albums differently. When you record on your own, you're doing things like double tracking vocals and stuff. How hard is it to keep track of what you're doing and keep everything organized when you're doing it by yourself?
Well, that I'm okay with. I actually, I'm thinking about the vocals specifically. So there's a lot of harmony. I think actually I don't. Maybe it's easier. I don't need to keep track of the double track. I don't have any vocals that are double tracked. Okay. Meaning where you get that effect of the double track sound sort of thickens the voice. All my lead vocal stuff is just one. It's just a take, or it might be a few takes I've smushed together. But it's not a double track. But yeah, there might be a couple harmony lines with it, and then obviously there's tunes with multiple overlapping guitars or keyboards or whatever. I actually find that's the fun part for me. I don't know. I actually like that texture stuff. It is. You have to be. I don't know if I don't think I have a real attention issue. I don't struggle, fortunately, with ADHD or anything. I imagine that would be really tough. The software nowadays, I got to say, makes it so easy to track that stuff. At least the stuff that I I bought, it's this thing called Studio One. I don't know. I find it pretty straightforward, and
Okay.
I haven't gotten lost yet, and I haven't lost anything yet. That's the bigger thing. I haven't accidentally destroyed stuff. I think the danger more is that it's because I don't have a budget. Like, you go to a studio and you're like, you're watching like money's going by, right? I
Yeah.
mean, so the danger for me is not so much like, will I get lost? Like, literally, can I find what the hell's going on? But rather, will I get so like in my head that, you know what I mean? Like, come on, stop already.
Yeah.
There's just too many possibilities, right? I could track forever.
Yeah.
No one's right. There's no monetary. The spare bedrooms. I'm not renting my own spare bedroom, right? I'm not, so,
Right. Yeah.
So I don't know. I think the bigger thing with this recording process that can get, I guess, dangerous is I get too immersed in all the possibilities and lose sight of when shit should be let go and just done. So, but I haven't managed to lose track of stuff. No.
Well, that's good. That's good. Now, you mentioned that your degree in psychology and being a psychologist will have an effect on your songwriting. But does it work the opposite way? I guess is what I'm asking. Do you incorporate anything from your musical career into your psychology profession? And I'm not sure exactly how you would do that. So I guess that's why I'm asking.
Yeah, well, if it is, it's not direct. I mean, there's music therapy or people who integrate or, bring in sort of, maybe a major way, maybe it's a tiny way. They bring music into therapy as a therapeutic tool, maybe. Mm-hmm. So I don't do any of that. So that would be the most straightforward, obvious. Oh, you bring your music. I don't do it, but there's literally none of that. Right. My clients don't. My individual sort of clients, I don't think know at all that I do this. Sort of like several protective layers of stuff. But I mean, who knows? Maybe not. But I imagine, though, just everyone has their lived experience, right? And mine involves both a lot of exposure in the music world and musicians and the world of people in that. And then even with theater, having done that from a very young age through my early 20s, I probably benefit just from the exposure to a lot of that, either whether it's thinking in different ways, like creatively, or just being with, people who might not gravitate towards other professions I would otherwise be, tracks that I would be interacting with. So just having greater exposure to that probably helps my clinical work in some way. It's hard to put a real finger on what exactly, how it would show up, though.
So because there's no like concrete answer. They can't. It's not I'm always like you were saying. You're not. Hey, listen to my new album for part of your.
Oh, sure, right, yeah, and I'm sure. By the way, and I know there are people who might really bring pretty directly music into the therapy situation. It's just the stuff I do, which is a lot of like trauma work, like PTSD, anxiety relevant stuff, OCD. I mean, the stuff that tends to work there, it's not a lot of research on music therapy for that. That's just not what I do. But yeah, I don't know. There's got to be some link. I tell you, there's a few other people I know. I'm sure it's any profession where have been in psychology, are just friggin' amazing musicians. I mean, so there's clearly, it's not like, some, even in this local area in Durham, like I know people who are both in psychology and just are, incredible players or songwriters. So I don't know, for whatever that's worth. And I'm definitely not the only one with both, with the shared interest.
When you're writing your lyrics, do you ever analyze them a little too much? I mean, you're saying you get into the technical aspects of producing and the layering and all that, and it's easy for you to get bogged down in that. But do you ever look at what you've written and like, the hell was I thinking? And start to analyze your own work?
Okay. Yeah. Yes and no. So one thing I tend to avoid, I don't do, I don't know if you may not have had enough time with the record to notice this, but there's not like, there's no narrative exposition. My songs are not like, here's what happened, verse one, you know what I mean? They don't work that way.
Right.
So one thing is it's hard to read them. I know that a listener is not like tracking some linear, just like I'm not, some progression and narrative. So I don't need to be concerned. Like there's not that, right?
Right.
There's more like, so I write lyrics, I think I mentioned earlier, always after the music, or in this case more, I would have a bed of kind of rhythmic and maybe chordal stuff I liked, and I'd be kind of standing by the microphone. I mean, this is stuff I never would have been able to do before. It was I loved it. I would just stand there and I would loop and just kind of hum, and certain words would just tend to fit. I mean, the way I tend to write is I'm not even really thinking about other than a general idea. And I don't know, I just, and then some words seem to fit. Okay. And if I can tweak those words and it somehow resonates like to one of these themes I knew I wanted to write about, like, all right, that's going to be the song. And I just kind of work around that.
Oh, okay.
And so I'm self-conscious about, I can get analytical about lyrics in the sense that I don't like writing them, but, but I don't want to be cliche.
Right.
So I think so even though I don't like writing them, I don't end up just kind of writing whatever, because I feel like I don't know, like I get embarrassed. I can tell when I have a reaction to something I write down, like, oh God, so it's pretty quick for me when I know that I think it's just shit.
Yeah.
And so I kind of like the sound of the words is as important to, again, I'm not looking for a story. I'm not looking for a narrative. So it really is, is something about almost like more like the poetry, like when I sing it with that particular melody, do the words do they kind of make sense to me? And then, I want to be able to look at it and go, no one else could have written, like, this is just like this, the sequence of these words, nobody else is going to do this. But usually the way I write, they're not going to do that. And then, can I argue to myself that there's some sense to it, that it's not just words, right? There's got to be something there that I could see where, this all makes sense together, even if it's not narrative.
Okay, so you're looking at the lyrics more musically than having a meaning first.
Right. If it doesn't, I could write, like, I've never written, I don't think, this sounds like a bold statement, but I think it's true. I don't think I've ever written a line and then put music to it.
Okay.
Like, I've never written a lyric and then thought, oh, that's a cool lyric, I'm going to write a song. That's going to make a great chorus. Let me do that. Right. And I know people do that. I cannot do that. So for me, it's always, there's some progression, some feel, there's some melody, and maybe the words happen at the exact same time as the melody, but there's some musical thing happening there. And then a particular lyric might hook me. And then again, I will pay more attention to the lyrics. Like it'll come with the melody. And once it does come, I don't get, because of the way I write it, I don't get too editing driven. I'm actually better with, like, once I get it down there, I can tell, like, okay, I'm okay with that. And hopefully people will make sense of it and, go from there. And, as long as it doesn't make me wince. I mean, I definitely have a wince, but there's that, but I think I've done it enough that I don't often actually write something that makes me wince. I used to do it a lot. So as long as it clears that hurdle, then, it's fine.
Well, who are your musical influences growing up? As I was listening, I was trying to pick out some of them on my own just to see if I was accurate. I came up with some, like, Genesis, Peter Gabriel's influences, maybe some Billy Joel, but I also heard and maybe it was more of your vocal style. I heard some Donald Fagen for sure. Am I accurate with any of those, or are you just?
Yeah, I'll take it. Well, I'll take it from the back forward, back to front, because it's easier. I can say for the last one for sure. No, I don't think I've listened to any. I think I've heard. I feel bad saying this. I just being honest. I don't think I've heard more than half a Steely Dan tune in my life.
Wow.
So maybe I've now the thing though I know about that and I might like is just for some reason back when I was first exposed to it. I mean, I've heard a couple too. I mean, like if you started humming a Steely, like clearly I would know. Oh, that's the Steely Dan tune. There's a couple of it, but I've never heard an album front to back by them, and I listen to music a shitload. So that's sort of bizarre that I haven't heard it. There was something about what I love conceptually about what I know they do is the progressions are super interesting. Quarterly, the progressions, a lot of jazz stuff, which I would think I'd be really into, and maybe I would be at this point in my life. But when I was exposed to it, whenever the hell I was exposed to it, whether it was high school or college, something about it I just couldn't grab onto. And what's funny is we'll probably finish this talk, and because now I'm feeling bad saying it's not like anybody from Steely Dan's ever did this. But I'm sure I'm gonna go online or Spotify or something, and then I'm gonna want to tomorrow call you and text you and be like, oh my God, I missed out. So let's assume I've missed out.
Okay.
But what I know, even if I have missed out, is that it's really had no influence on me because I just don't know it. But let's go the other way. The Genesis Peter Gabriel thing, this actually came up. I was doing an interview by phone earlier today, and this same thing came up.
Oh, right.
And it took me a bit. Okay, so I would view the Genesis thing as different than Peter Gabriel, because Genesis is still like Peter Gabriel era Genesis. Mm-hmm. I did not really come to until pretty late. You know what I mean? Like, I knew him as he was going along. Like, I was too young to know in real time Peter Gabriel 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, and 3. But I went back and I was really familiar with all that stuff, right?
Yeah.
Before I was songwriting, I was familiar, and I love Peter Gabriel. What is it? 3? Is that the Melt one where his face is? I love that. I mean, the first. The first album, even though my tune sounds nothing like it, Here Comes the Flood, off the first. I think it's his first solo record. I mean, is just mind-blowingly good. Yeah. So I have long liked Peter Gabriel, and then even his later stuff was Us. I think that's not. I'm not actually a huge fan of So, which is his big one. And then there's Us, which I really like, Digging in the Dirt and that stuff. Yeah. So Genesis, I was being asked specifically about prog rock, and I was scratching my head going, prog rock, because I didn't know any, I didn't grow up listening to prog rock or whatever. So, but I think when I hear someone say prog rock or Genesis, first thing I think is a lot of noodling and soloing, right? Yeah. And even if you've only heard my record once, there is no soloing or noodling. I mean, that's just not my thing. But I think what it is there's a lot of sections to my tunes. So a number of my tunes, this happened maybe with my older tunes even more. There's weird sections, not just verse, chorus, bridge, whatever. But I'll have a really bizarre, even this album, thinking Helpless.
That's how we want to make you feel.
Think you're getting to the bridge, and then I know I intentionally have this bizarro instrumental thing happening there, right?
Yeah.
And Clay, which a couple people have told me, that would have been really catchy and people would have liked that, which is not really my thing anyway, but you blew it. And the reason I blew it, the verse is kind of, quote unquote catchy, and then it gets progressively less catchy as it goes on, which is kind of intentional. I don't even have the chorus play the second half of the song.
I'll tell you what.
There's a new part and then another new part closes the song. That's probably I think that's maybe what the Genesis, there are parts, right? I mean, there's so many, you listen to Lamb Lies Down on Broadway, and it's not just that they're noodling, it's that there's all these mini suites within their tune. That is cool.
And there's a theme.
And the theme and the Lamb, exactly. But I think I came to that so relatively late in my kind of, my songwriting, and my songwriting is already kind of what it is. So I think I ended up in a similar place where that stuff appealed to me, but it was probably because I was exposed to I kind of like this cinematic or almost theatrical element to it, which I know Peter Gabriel digs too. I'm sure that's what I mean, that's probably what drew him. And just catching a listener, I want an active listener. And you got to be more active to follow, multiple parts. And probably growing up, because I did all the piano and stuff, I was exposed to a bunch of classical music, which is all about suites and parts. So I think there, but yeah, there are a couple tunes when you say Peter Gabriel. I don't know if you were thinking of any specific stuff. I don't think I don't know if I'm influenced, like if it shows up in my songwriting so much, but I like the emotion. There's something about like some of his tunes, the way they grab me. I mean, if I end up, whether it's Digging in the Dirt or that song I referenced, Here Comes the Flood, that if my tunes grab people in the same way, that'd be great. And if his influence has shown up, I don't know. Were you thinking of any particular? I'm curious because I haven't heard that till today, and now I've heard it twice.
Man, I'm trying to remember. It's funny because these notes that I'm building off of, I'm going off of the first time we were supposed to talk, which was about a week and a half ago.
The car trouble. You had the car trouble.
Yeah, my tire blew. I was going 70 miles an hour down the highway. All of a sudden, my tire blew, and I'm on the side of the road for an hour and a half waiting for a tow truck.
That's the exact best speed for that.
Apparently it is, because I was able to make it. I was in the left lane, and all the assholes in Northern Virginia would not let me go over to the right to go to the shoulder so I could. So I'm riding for like half a mile on this flat tire, just trying to go and thinking, I've got this interview. What am I going to do? I got to text Cole. I can't just blow it off. I hope he doesn't mind me texting him. And I'm sitting there thinking about this, looking at this blown up tire. It's 9 degrees out. I've called my wife. My wife is coming down. Nobody's coming to the tow truck. I had all kinds of problems with the roadside assistance. I put in a request for it. They never got it. It took an hour and a half for them to get. It was a horrible night. So
what you're saying is this night is at least slightly better.
It is. It's much better. Except I ended up having to leave work half an hour late. So I'm sitting there going, "Oh my God, I can't do this again. I can't have another problem with this. I can't reschedule on Cole again. He'll kill me." And I won't forgive myself. So I'm trying to remember what track it was that I was thinking of when I wrote that down, but it's escaping me. But I will tell you right now. Oh,
no worries. I don't mean to put you on the spot. Yeah,
no. Well, see, that's what I'm doing for you this whole interview. I'm just putting you on the spot.
I'm expecting it, right?
I do. You mentioned the song Clay off your album Carnival Barkers.
Think about what you're gonna say now. Wind them up till trouble comes. Tell them that you've always won. You get a thrill, and if they figure out you've put them on, well, you made a clay, so we know you'll find a shape to use to come back anytime you want.
That is my favorite song on the whole album. I love that track. I love it's got that like a almost, it's like a soft chugging guitar riff, which I really like. And then you've got that wild that synth solo at the end.
Yeah.
That I love that. And maybe that's what I was thinking was a little more Genesis influence, but
it is. Yeah, it definitely that, or the break. I can hear. I know you're that, and the break in Flood. Where in the middle of Flood, everything drops out, and there's this weird like a horn coming in. It's they're definitely like changes that are pretty dramatic and different than you might expect in a regular kind of indie pop song, I guess.
Yeah. And that's, I'm sure that's what I was thinking when I wrote these notes. I'm sure.
Yeah.
That's what
Excellent work. Yeah. So to go to the influence question, I mean, I'll try to keep it brief. So I'm sure Peter Gabriel shows up. I've liked him for a long time. I'm sure that's showing up somewhere, somehow, even if I can't put my finger on it. I do know for a while, my like teenage years, I was really into like late 70s, early 80s, Britpop, new wave, post-punk. And so this would be the whole category of music like Squeeze, XTC, first 2 albums, Elvis Costello.
Okay.
And there's something about the way those albums I'm thinking of, like, they're all kind of, there's a lot of like 76 through 80 there, but I'm also thinking about Imperial Bedroom, which is an early 80s and Elvis Costello record, where I remember for a while just being really taken by how different they approached chord progressions. Again, I really rarely listen to lyrics. I have no idea. I mean, I'm sure the lyrics were fine, but it's not what's grabbing me. Like, so, but it was the progressions were just really interesting. They were very active progressions. They were sort of restless. They move around a lot. They're pretty busy at times. In fact, I'm sure that's off-putting to a bunch of people. And I know for a while that really, again, I don't know if anyone listening would say, I've for sure never, ever heard somebody say, you sound like XTC. So like, I know it's not that clear, but for me, I know that the way I started thinking about chord progressions, which for me is the song, like that's kind of how, that was clearly influenced by that stuff. But again, I don't think necessarily someone hears me and says, like, so far, no one's ever said, oh, you sound like any of those people I just named, in fact. Yeah. So I guess it's a good thing, but I know they shaped sort of how I think about music and how I start to approach songwriting. And then, I mean, I'm sure that I pretty voraciously listen to music. So I'm sure that even stuff I'm hearing over the last few years, not even just influences like from the late 70s, early 80s, or even earlier. I mean, again, I had to go back a little bit, but someone mentioned Paul Simon when they were referencing a couple tunes of mine in terms of the way they heard things. And have I listened to a crap load of Paul Simon? Absolutely. Yeah. So I'm sure it shows up, right? I mean, just like David Bowie. Is there somehow is David Bowie coming through in my music? You know what I mean? I wish. Yeah. Probably not. As the interviewers are shaking their heads, there's no David Bowie call. But my point is, it's really hard. You know what I mean? Like I can point to that late 70s, early 80s stuff because I kind of know that I started like almost deliberately when I was songwriting initially. I was almost manic with my chord progressions. Okay. Like I'd be playing with musicians who are like, oh my God, like there's just so much happening, right? But at times it was just sort of unnecessary. Yeah. So anyhow, hopefully I've pared down on the worst of those excesses. But I can spend a whole show talking about music I like. I just don't know if how they've influenced me. Yeah.
Okay. You've done both recording at home and recording in studios. Have you had to do anything really weird to get a sound you want? I've spoken with a lot of different musicians doing this show, and I hear some weird studio stories. Like recently I had Peter Hayes on from Black Rebel Motorcycle Club, and he was talking about how to get the vocal effect that he wanted on one song, he stuck his head in a piano and started singing inside the piano. And he said he actually was really disappointed because when they decided to do it live, all he had to do was add reverb, and it sounded exactly the same. Have you done anything really unusual, like stick your head in the piano to get your vocal sound?
That's hilarious. Like the engineer the whole time, he's putting his head in the piano. I'm sure you had to, and some, guys just back there going, has nobody told him about the reverb? Don't tell him. No, this is awesome. Is someone filming this? He's got his head. Oh my God.
Have you had any weird studio experiences or maybe something live that was bizarre that happened?
Well, actually live, recording, nothing real dramatic. I mean, just as a general setup thing now with my little spare bedroom, it's sort of hilarious because I track all my vocals in there. And initially I of course was thinking, I got to soundproof this. I got to whatever. A, it's really pricey. B, it's not clear that it really works. Meaning the stuff I could really kind of realistically buy and put in there. What was it? So what happened was I was recording vocals and not really digging. I thought I'm going to have to I got to go to a studio and record my vocals. If I knew I needed to track the drums I was going to track at a studio, and I thought, all right, maybe I could do the vocals. And what's weird is, for some reason, a couple times in a row, I brought in an ironing board. So I basically put myself in a corner, not corner, but sort of at an angle from one of the corners.
Okay.
Facing out into the room, right? So I got the corner behind me, one of the corners of this Fortunately, not exactly a square. That would be not good. And behind me, I was like putting blankets and all this and whatever. And what's weird is I randomly grabbed an ironing board. Clearly, I don't iron, and because I could permanently install it in here, and I put it down. And then what I did was I stacked a couple like old guitar boxes on top of it, and then put the blanket. So I discovered later part of what's happening is I'm getting the blanket far enough off the wall. You don't really want it on the wall. You need a little bit of space from the wall to create the effect you want in terms of the soundproofing. And so this ironing board worked. I mean, so actually on the credits, either on the actual CDs or on the thing, I think I called my little space the ironing board, recorded at the ironing board. So I have this, but this is a really finicky thing. It's a fucking ironing board. So depending on what I put on it, it can't handle the weight or the way I've distributed it. And the worst was I bought one condenser mic for my vocal, and I think a week into my ownership of this mic, that's about when I figured this out. I came in ready to record some vocals. The mic was down, bashed in, because the ironing board had wiped out with the boxes and the weight of the blanket directly on the mic stand and the mic. So, but I found it so good that I put it back up, cussing, and use the broken mic though. So the whole album is recorded on a busted mic with an ironing board behind me as my soundproofing. But Ian, who's a great mixer, I mean, Ian works at this high-end recording studio. Even he was like, I told him a story. He can't believe, he's like, the vocal actually sounds pretty good, but it's a friggin' ironing board. I mean, other than that, it's just basics to like, playing guitars with like combs. I remember being in the studio trying to get a specific guitar sound, and playing it with a comb or playing it, weird stuff like that. But I gotta say, I got pretty lazy in my little studio, using just virtual amps and everything. I didn't do any really creative stuff. I sure as shit didn't sing in any pianos or anything. Yeah, on the road, when you say that there's actually, so two things come to mind. One, actually, a little on the road story. The only one that's jumping to mind that's actually sort of funny is we were on one of the tours. It was like a couple-week leg, this years ago. This is for Scarves and Knives. Okay. And so all of us were coming out of this Durham area, and we had been, I don't know, we're a week and a half in. None of us, I don't think, had played, or I hadn't played Baltimore before. We were playing Baltimore. We weren't in, I wish I could remember the name of the club, or maybe it's better that I don't remember the name of the club because then I can more freely talk about it. So it's an area that, it's not like in the main area of Baltimore. So first we're a little bit like thrown, like, where are we? Whatever. We're unloading, and I pull up, and there's just a lot of activity, like too many things being unloaded. If you know what I mean? I'm like, what the hell? There's like a 2 or 3 band bill. I'm like, what? There cannot be this much equipment. And so and we're supposed to be, I don't know, I remember what time we're supposed to go on, but I go in, and the person who booked me is not there. And the person at the bar says, "Oh no, we got you on the bill tomorrow night."
What?
I was like, "Yeah, we got your headline tomorrow night." The next night we were in Philly or something. You know what I mean? Like, we're not headlining the next night. I pull out my email, where I have the correct date, and they're like, "Oh shit, we really screwed up." They get on the phone with the person who booked me. She's super apologetic. I mean, so at this point we're all trying to laugh about it, but we're in Baltimore. and so she proposes, she says, look, well, this is, you'll get a kick out of this, given what you just described, how you describe my music at the outset, how you listen to stuff that's usually a little harder than this. So it was metal night. So what she suggests is that he be included in metal night.
Oh my gosh.
And she says, you were supposed to headline, you could take the middle spot. We feel really bad. So we agreed. So we played. So it was definitely the most bizarre gig on that leg of the tour. Here's the funny thing is, it was probably our best show of the run, because what happened, part of it was we just really brought in. So I don't know about the other guys. For me, I kind of went on stage pissed. I very rarely go on stage pissed, right? I mean, like, wow, how often do you go on stage angry about something? I'm just not that angry. Usually I'm just like, oh, this is cool. Hopefully they'll be into it. But we played my tunes so quickly. So, and I'm sure the guys were all, this is great. We love how the tunes sound. But yeah, so I mean, it still didn't sound metal. My songs were still my songs. But you know what was awesome is that was the night where, I don't think I'm misremembering this, the other people in the band, they kind of knew what happened, but they were like the coolest. Like, they listened, they liked it. You know, they could have been bullshitting, but they're like, oh my God, it's so different. I mean, it probably is totally different than they're used to playing.
Yeah, it's metal night, man.
So it actually turned out to be a great night. The other
oh gosh.
Yeah, so the rest of the tour was pretty uneventful. That like
since metal night, have you gotten into any metal?
No, I don't know. I should. I should probably book more metal nights, even if I don't get into metal. It's not even about playing it. I need to get in the midst of a metal bill.
Exactly.
It really brings out the best of me and my band.
See, look at that. If I can help you out with that in any way, when you come to DC, I know a couple metal bands. We'll get you right in the middle of them.
That's fantastic. Good, thank you, Mark.
Oh man, well, Cole, look, I've kept you quite a while tonight. I want to thank you so much for coming on and telling me these hilarious stories. It was great, and explaining a little bit about the album. It's fascinating. If you do decide to go out on tour, I definitely want to come catch it. If you come to the DC, Northern Virginia area, love to see the live show, because I did hear your album at Shuba's, and I thought it was great. So I would love to hear. I would love to hear you live, actually in person.
Yeah, thank you. Is that one of the things they have posted from their live series or whatever from Shuba's? Is it? So. Was I solo there? Do you remember, or was I playing with some people?
I believe there were some people. I believe you were with a band.
Okay, yeah, because I've done both there. I was just wondering. I should look to see what's up there. But yeah, Shuba's is a great, just a sweet venue. Yeah. That's a great. Yeah.
I found it. I was trying to find some of your scarves and knife stuff on YouTube, and that's what popped up. So I was like, oh cool. Let me check this out. So I did get a chance to listen to some of that. Where can people find you on social media, website, anything they can do to buy the album, help support it, see you if you do go out on tour?
Yeah, absolutely. So the website is the name of my band, I guess. So I Am Casting Music. So it's just one, word, I Am Casting Music. And from there, there's all the buttons you could press to get you to the Bandcamp page, the Spotify, Apple stuff, YouTube. Pretty much if you search I Am Casting and then the name Carnival Barkers, that'll probably pull up the videos too. There's a couple of videos on YouTube now for Flood and Window that were premiered over the last month or two. I know Pop Matters is premiering the album later this week. The album officially comes out February 22nd. I think Pop Matters is running like a review and interview and premiere thing this Friday or this Thursday. That'll sit out there for a week, and then the actual album come out. As far as social media, I've been pretty horrible about that. I'm just getting started, but the both Facebook and Twitter stuff starting to happen. It'd be awesome if people actually showed up on those sites and did things like followed and liked. So that way, if I decide to start tweeting, it will be a little less humiliating. I think the Facebook thing is just, I want to say it's just IAC. But you can just go Facebook, I Am Casting. And I know that the handle at Twitter is I Am Casting. No, it's I Am Casting Music. So I Am Casting Music pretty much. By the way, Mark, what happened with this is that I realized that I Am Casting is a casting agency, of course.
Oh. It's not Harvey Weinstein, is it?
And there's two. There's competing casting. There's an I Am Casting in the UK and an I Am Casting in the US. So that's why I had to be I Am Casting Music with all my links. At first I was like, oh man, is this gonna be like a patent issue? But because they're not doing music, there's no conflict. It's just the problem is all these sites have to add this music thing. So
you don't want people searching Harvey Weinstein and finding you.
Right.
Or looking for you and finding Harvey Weinstein. Either way.
Yes. But so the album's called Carnival Barkers, and I if anyone cares to give a listen, that'd be awesome.
Well, I recommend it. It's fantastic. Me being more of a metal guy, liking it, it was good. We'll see if we can get, if Kerrang or one of those metal magazines from the 80s can do a review on it.
That'd be sweet.
Cole, man, thank you so much for coming on, man. I really do appreciate your time. I had a blast.
Mark, thank you.